Hello authors, I'm Joanne Morrell, children's and young adult fiction writer and author of short non-fiction for authors. Thanks for joining me for the Hybrid Author podcast, sharing interviews from industry professionals to help you forge a career as a hybrid author, both independently and traditionally publishing your books. You can get the show notes for each episode and sign up for your free author pass over at the Hybrid Author website to discover your writing process, get tips on how to publish productively, and get comfortable promoting your books at www.hybridauthor.com.au. Let's crack on with the episode. Hello authors! I hope you're all keeping well in whatever part of the world you reside and listen to the podcast in. Today's interview is with Australian horror and spec fiction writer Pauline Yates. And Pauline shares with us how she got started writing in the horror genre, what scenes and conventions fans of horror expect in horror writing, and her tips for authors looking to get started writing horror. So in my author adventure this past week, work on my horror feature script has begun, but I'm not sure whether I'm going to actually make the Monday deadline for the competition or not. I've still got a long way to go, and realistically, I think I started too late. Should maybe have given this project a month over, say, 2 weeks, because 2 weeks would probably have been enough to get the writing done, working on it and it alone solidly for 2 weeks, not factoring in other commitments, which of course are my kids and domestic needs and everything else. But as always, I'm optimistic. I usually work better under pressure and with tight deadlines, and sometimes these things just come together. But if they don't, they don't. It's not wasted time. It might be, again, something started and ready to be picked up next year, and as that can be the case for a lot of my work, sometimes I'm quite early with it and it needs to just chill. It's all learning and how you work and working with that. So bear that in mind if there's projects, you're trying to pump out and you're just either hitting a wall or you're running out of time or anything like that. Rather than stress, just accept it for what it is. It's emerging and it might not be the right time. Some good news is I have sent through the majority of what needed to go to the web designer. So that should be one set of jobs, ticked off my list, and I'm really looking forward to seeing that all come together. What was really cool about getting the material to her was the work with me matter in particular, and that gave me a chance to, reflect and go back and view past experience and realise that I've done a lot in this field and in past positions, which all ties together into this career that, I'm paving for myself. And it was nice, and it made me quite excited for the kind of sessions and workshops and things I'm going to be utilising my experience and, offering next year. So I'll share with you some of these in the coming weeks. What I have been noticing is that I'm craving just wrapping everything up which needs to be done, setting up systems and positioning myself for a smoother working process next year. And just being, like I said last time on the podcast, just being ahead of the game rather than behind it. That will make my life a whole lot easier. And yeah, I'm in the process of kind of working through that. I have been feeling also that I'm very excited for just some time off at the end of the year. We've got a caravan trip booked and I'm looking forward to just selecting some books to read and, switching off from everything and having fun, making memories with my family, and yeah, really just having some downtime and just relaxing and some good times. So yes, I'm also feeling like I want to have some fun lately. I feel like it's maybe it's just been a lot of work. It's Halloween obviously approaching, and we've got a Halloween party this weekend, which I'm very excited for. I hit the secondhand stores this afternoon and I found this amazing jacket and sort of top and dress thing, and I'm going as the Countess from American Horror Story, who was played by Lady Gaga, and I think that was season 6, The Hotel. So I can't wait to dress up as her and really just have some fun. The kids get into it as well and do all the trick-or-treating, and yeah, some of the houses in my neighbourhood have been decorated for weeks and weeks, so I better do what I do, which is just I make my house look like a face, which is really easy. It's just a couple of eyebrows over the front windows and a couple of bits of paper to make it look the windows like eyeballs. So like it's an angry face, and that's all I'm doing now. So we used to have loads of bushes that my husband has now pulled out and planted flowers instead. So we would decorate those with cobwebs, but I'm not going to decorate the nice flowers. So. So if you love the podcast or any of the episodes has helped you further in your author career, you can now pay it forward by buying me a coffee over at www.buymeacoffee.com/thehybridauthor. Links to that are in the show notes and on website and wherever. Or you can leave me a review on whatever platform you listen to the podcast on to help other writers like you discover the podcast. Let's all support each other. That's enough from me. Let's crack on with the episode. Pauline Yates lives in Queensland, Australia, and writes horror and dark speculative fiction. She's an Australian Shadows Award short fiction finalist, Australian Horror Writers Association AHWA short story winner, and is translated with Riflessi di Luce Lunare, RiLL in Italy. Her short stories appear or are forthcoming in anthologies and magazines including Black Hair Press, Midnight Echo, IFWG Publishing, Pseudopod, Metaphorosis, plus others. She's a member of the AHWA and Horror Writers Association, HWA. When not writing, which rarely happens because thinking about her stories is the same thing, she enjoys enticing native wildlife into her garden and taking photos of the sunrise. If she wakes up on time. Welcome to the Hybrid Author Podcast, Pauline.
Thank you, Joanna. Thank you for having me.
We're so excited to have you and learn all about horror. Just can't wait to dive in. So please tell us, you've obviously had works published, and tell us about your work and, how you came to write in the horror genre.
Oh, goodness me. Okay, well, I love horror. Horror and ghost stories, and I'm of an age where I grew up on a diet of Stephen King novels, the Misery, The Shining, The Pet Sematary, It, Cujo. I loved all those stories. The thing I love about Stephen King is that he just brings you into his world. He creates these worlds and you just get immersed in it. And they're always usually dark and something a bit, spooky going on there. And of course, he's a god of horror. How can you not love him? So that was what I grew up with. Certainly, I do actually remember thinking back in my 20s, thinking, I want to be a good horror writer just like him, But it took another 20 years before I actually started writing. I've only really started writing in the last 10 years. Because I had kids and got married and had a job, and we did pony club and horse riding and all that sort of stuff. There was no time to write.
Quite different from horror pony club.
Very different from horror. So look, once I did get back into writing, the first thing I did was write my novel, which I really wanted to write, and that had been with me all my life. But in the process of writing my novel, I realized how much I actually needed to learn how to write. Okay, because the writing's changed from when I grew up writing stories to now, like 20 years or 20, 30 years later, everything has changed. I mean, I typed on a typewriter, and now we use the internet and Word pads and Word docs to do everything. But the writing, the style of writing and grammar and everything has changed a lot too. Everything's a lot tighter. So I had to relearn a lot of stuff. And one of the things how I did that was actually writing short stories. I was introduced to the NYC Midnight Writing Challenges, which is a writing competition. They run various events throughout the year, and they do that over a period of time. Like, for example, the short story competition, the first round will be run over a week, and you've got 7 days to write a 2,500 word story with given prompts, and you all put into groups and everything, and you write to those prompts. If you get through that round, like if you're in the top 5 stories, you move through the semi-finals, and then it's, I think, 2,000 words in 3 days, and then the final is 1,500 words, I think, in 1 day. I've been in a final before. That is the most intense experience. I didn't do any good in the final, but I did it, if oh my goodness.
Good on you, yeah.
So look, that was the short story, and they also have the flash fiction, and now they've brought more things in, like 100-word challenge and 250-word challenge, and I'd see there's a new one out this year, which is a rhyming story challenge, which I'd love to do, but I just simply at the moment do not have time to do everything. So when it came to the prompts, because you're given different prompts, now I have written everything from horror to sci-fi sci-fi to drama to political satire to comedy to rom-com to spy stories, crime capers.
Wow.
What else have I done? Suspense, mystery. I think tapping into all of those really helped me define where my strengths were, and my strengths were in horror or anything dark. Although I am a bit of a romantic at heart, and I do love a romance, but the horror and the dark fiction was just right up my alley. So, of course, that's where I started directing my work to, the stories that I was writing. So and it's only been in the last 2 years, I suppose, where I've really channeled all my energy into writing horror stories. And, they're doing okay.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Getting published, getting paid for it, so it must be working. The first story, which I have written a lot of dark stories, but before this one, but the story that I won the short story competition with the Australia Horror Writers Association, that was my first really big horror story, and I was absolutely stoked when I won that, because I just thought I'll sit down and have a go. I don't know how I'll do, but I'll have a go. I mean, what's worse that can happen? Nothing. I'll just hear nothing back, and then I won it. I thought, oh my God. I was so happy with that. And that's the story that also got chosen. The Australian Horror Writers in partnership with RiLL, and they send over stories. RiLL collects all the winning stories from around the world and puts them in their anthology each year. So as a partnership kind of thing, they had to choose a story. It was either my story or the other winning, because there's 2 categories, the short story and the flash fiction. So they could choose one or two, and mine was chosen, which was just like, oh, that's even better. Now I'm translated. So this little story has taken me on a bit of a wild ride, because from that, then it got selected for the preliminary ballot in the Bram Stoker, which was just mind-blowing. And it also, well, I didn't go any further with that, and that was totally fine. But then it also got me a finalist in the Australian Shadows Awards. I was just so proud of that. So yeah, that one took me on a nice little ride. So that was the start of it. And then in between all of that, with other writing, I sort of fell in with another publisher, Black Hair Press, and these guys are right up my alley. They are so me. And it was such a relief to find a publisher that I really resonated with my work. They do a lot of monthly Drabble challenges, which is like 100 words. Drabbles, writing a story in 100 words is really challenging, but I am so hooked on those. And I've got, if you have a look on my website, you'll see all these publications, Black Hair Press. Every month I have a shot at it, and I'm doing quite well. So I just love it. I love the challenge.
I read on your website, I think, which might be one of these ones that you're talking about. Oh gosh, was it the zombie one with the blood? I can't remember what it was called. Yeah. It was just, and it is. I don't write in short mediums that much, but just reading that, it was fantastic, and it just sort of gave me so much for how small it was. Yeah,
thank you. Yeah, how to stop a zombie apocalypse, that theme was. So that was fun. We had another prompt earlier in the year about zippers, and I wrote 2 for it, and I couldn't decide between them. One was a comedy and one was quite dark. So I sent in the dark one to stick with the theme, and I got that one published. But then I also sent them this comedy one that's called Pinch. It's about a zipper. It's from the point of view of a zipper, okay? And it's dark and quite nasty, but very funny. So if you want something to read a little bit out there and just need a bit of a laugh, look up Pinch. Okay.
I'll have to read that one.
That kind of reveals my wicked sense of humour. I do like that, to inject that into my stories. So I guess from that point, from the Best Medicine days, doing all those travels, I've just focused on writing better horror stories. I still feel like I've got a lot to learn, but I have spent a lot of this year doing a stack of reading, reading everything I can in that genre from a variety of authors. And we're so lucky in Australia. We have got some brilliant horror writers going at the moment. I started just expanding, I guess. So I can tell you more towards the end, the things I've got coming out soon that are a result from that, which I'm really happy about. But so that's where I'm at. That's how I've come to write horror.
Wow, that's amazing. So obviously from, a love of horror, of the genre from your early life and then through the years, and then found it again in writing, which is great. The associations you're part of, did you join them first and then were sort of seeing opportunities and then doing the horror, or were you just writing horror and you looked around to see where your people were at, kind of thing?
Yeah, that's it. I started writing horror, and I think it was through Twitter I came across the Horror Writers Association. I didn't know, but all this is all new to me still. I spend every day writing, but there is still so much of this world that I'm still learning about. But the Horror Writers Association was actually the first one. Even though that's overseas and I'm an Australian, a lot of my earlier stories, they're all based overseas. Actually, until recently, there isn't a lot of places where I can send stories in Australia, but there's huge markets overseas. I'm also very much an American writer. I blame that on Stephen King because he's an American writer, and that's what I've grown up reading. And when I started writing, I never even considered setting stories in Australia, even though I've never been to America. Does that make sense? So I guess he has had a huge influence on me there. But that was okay. It was easy for me. So I guess all my connections at that point, the editors that I chose to use are from America. The publications I chose to submit to were in America. And when I came across the Horror Writers Association, I thought, yep, they're in America too. So, so I actually signed up because you have to have certain things published to get into some memberships at various levels. And I actually had achieved that, again, with the best medicine. And I achieved a level that I could reach. And I thought, okay, let's tap into this. So I did. I joined up them. Yeah, that's just like a wealth of information in there. So suddenly I'm learning more about more opportunities, learning about more authors out there that I can follow and read their work and see what they're doing. We get the newsletters every month, it goes on. But from there also, then I realised, hang on, I can join the Australian Horror Writers Association. That's here too. And of course, I want to support our local industries here as much as I can now that I feel like I'm sort of moving up a little bit. And so I joined up with them. I've been with them now for a couple of years. And so I do the Shadows Awards judging. So I've judged it judged last year, and I'm judging it this year again. And that's really good as well, just to learn all these writers. So it's opening my eyes to all these writers that are here in Australia right at our fingertips. They're just awesome, all of them. Everyone is so supportive. Yeah, the Australian group is such a supportive group. If you were looking to get into the horror genre, and one of those associations, depending on where you're based, here in Australia or overseas, you can't go wrong with either.
I write children's and young adult fiction, so I'm part of Squibby, and I've heard of like the romance writers of Australia, and I hadn't actually ever thought about whether there would be a horror association either. There's probably something for everyone, but
until it's like the teacher arrives when the student's ready, and it's very much that case in my case. So being able to join these associations has been really good for my learning. It's a continual learning thing, this writing gig. So
that's it. So from these associations, like you said, you're obviously getting information through reading others' works as well as newsletters and things like that. Have you done any courses? Can you take any writing courses through these? The associations?
Yes, you can. The AHWA has a lot of courses available throughout the year. The AHWA also have more a mentorship program, which I've almost nearly applied for this year, but then I thought I'm just not ready. I haven't got anything big that I want to work on, but I have heard reports from other people who have done it that it's just a fantastic experience. So if you can ever get that chance to do that, by all means apply for it. They just open your eyes to opportunities that you might not otherwise know about. So being connected with these associations is really helpful.
Yeah, that's it. And so I guess like the writing courses are all focused around writing horror exactly, rather than, say, storytelling. I suppose it's the same thing, isn't it?
It depends. Look, horror is so vast, and I guess there's so many different areas. There's novels, there's short fiction, there's long fiction. I'm going off the things that are actually in the judging at the moment. There's anthologies, collective works, and non-fiction. I'm really interested in the non-fiction at the moment. That's one of the ones that I'm judging, and I've been reading a few non-fiction articles coming through, not only from this competition but from other through the Horror Writers Association as well. And I'm finding it quite fascinating how, what people talk about and the scope of information out there. It's quite interesting, actually.
Well, is it like non-fiction and horror?
Non-fiction relating to horror.
Like real life horror, what people classify that as, I suppose.
No, not real. No, more about how you go about writing horror, or where ideas come from horror, or how horror has developed over the years, or changes because of changes in our life. Yeah, things like that. It can be really broad. It's so broad. And that's what I love about horror, the horror genre. It is so broad. You have certain things that you've got to do in a horror story, but the ideas can be just so vast, and it encompasses so many different things. It can be real life, it can be fantasy, it can be supernatural, it can be sci-fi, and you can set your story in any of those other genres and turn it into a horror story.
Yeah, that's really cool. That is very cool. Is there certain types of horror like classified to make you kind of feel a certain way? Like, is this a thing as in horror focused around violence, horror focused around gore, or horror focused around, just the chase or being scared, Is that the type of thing, or is that more what you would call a trope or something that you would find in horror, certain horrors?
Look, I think yes, all of those you can find in horror, but you'll also find the quiet horror as well. And I think if you ask the question, what is horror? It's not always about a maniac chasing you with a chainsaw and everyone getting cut up into pieces. The guts of horror is emotion. And usually fear. So you can have a horror story that based on one person and their fear of dying for whatever reason. And that's the fear that they have to fight. That's their battle. I mean, the essence of any horror story is someone is fighting for their life. It's not necessarily against the chainsaw wielding maniac. It could be against your own personal demons. And whether you survive that, how you survive that depends whether you can overcome, that fear, your personal. But another thing with horror is that yes, you may win, but you may lose a part of yourself somewhere. You got to sacrifice something. There's always a sacrifice in horror. You either lose a leg or lose your mind.
Yeah.
So,
or both.
That's what I mean. Like when horror is so vast, yes, it can be the chainsaw maniac, chasing and cutting of bodies and whatever, but it can also be a person locked in their room, and not wanting to come outside because of something that is stopping them, and that fear, and they will either die alone in that room or they will get out, So it's survival. Horror is about survival. How do you survive? What fears you? And of course, it's always set in some creepy atmosphere, which helps. That's what you're trying to create, a scary atmosphere. So you have your abandoned house or your creepy woods or, the locked room where you're in there all by yourself, or waking up in a coffin. That's a good one.
I love everything you just absolutely said there. When we read horror or watch horror, it's like emotional driven, facing fear.
Yeah.
And I suppose I've only ever read one of Stephen King's books, and I think it was, I can't even remember the title. It was the one where they go into the shop. It's that shop and people are getting different items.
Needful things.
Yeah. And that was more obviously just, your normal town, sort of like eerie, but it was what was happening, I suppose, to these people and their behaviours, I guess.
Well, it's been a long time since I read Needful Things. Yeah, there wasn't too much blood and gore in that, if any, I think. No, but it was more that psychological attack on people. Yeah, but yes, we had a devil type person who was stealing their souls, or if that is even what happened, I can't remember. That was their battle with that. And the type of horror that I really love, and I'll take a movie example from this one. It's only recently on Netflix. It's called Midsummer. And I don't know if you've seen it.
I did, yeah. I loved it. I didn't quite, I was trying to, I think there was so much more to it than I took in. I did love it.
I love that sort of horror where you start out with an innocent looking village and they're all doing their thing, all happy-go-lucky in nature and doing these nature pagan-y type rituals and stuff, and then people start dying.
Yeah.
And that's actually a pretty good example you got of how horror should work. You've got two characters, the boyfriend and the girlfriend. I can't recall their names. The boyfriend fought against it. He fought against what he saw as evil. The town didn't see it as evil. They were all quite brainwashed into the way that they thought was a natural life. So the evil or the horror actually comes from an outsider's perspective, which I think is important when you're writing stories. Is who sees it as horror? You've always got a protagonist and you've always got an antagonist, whatever those things may be. One of them is going to see the other as horror, but the person who they think is committing the horror may think they're not doing anything wrong at all. So really that's where the point of view comes in important, how that protagonist views what's happening, as whether it's horror or not. So in that Midsummer movie, the boyfriend, or both boyfriend and the girlfriend, saw it as, oh my God, what's going on here? This is kind of horror. He figured it out first. He tried to fight against it. He lost his life. She kind of figured it out as well, but she got a little bit sucked into it, and she shifted and became part of that town. So she lived, but she gave up that sane part of herself. Okay, so that's what I mean when you got to sacrifice something. That's what she sacrificed to live. But he wasn't prepared to sacrifice that. He died. Yeah. So I just thought they were good examples of how it can kind of, what the outcome should be.
It's same as that kind of relates back to that Needful Things with Stephen King, because I think, yes, they purchased items from this shop, but they had to do something in return for it. So, and also it was setting someone else up to not fail, but obviously something bad happening, and it's how far will you go, I suppose, for your own self. But
so they're the decisions that the protagonist has to make, and that's what drives the story, and setting it in the creepy towns.
That's it. Or the towns that become
or in the towns that look perfectly normal. Like there's been a lot of reference to Shirley Jackson's The Lottery, the short story The Lottery, which she wrote multiple years ago. And I've seen that referenced a lot lately, and that again is another story that starts out and you think everything is totally fine and normal, and then you get to the end and whack, it's not.
Wow, I'll have to check that one out. I haven't heard of that one. So that's great. Tell us, we've obviously talked about horror and the genre and certain bits and things. What are some of the common tropes you might find in there that, readers would pick up a horror and they'd expect a certain thing, or, what are some of the conventions and scenes in horror stories?
I think when you're talking tropes, and I did make some notes here because there's so many, you'd expect, if you came across things like a haunted house, a mad scientist, a vampire, serial killer, secret villages like we've just talked about, as a reader you can expect that you're going to read horror. But as a writer, those things have been done multiple times again, and it would get boring doing that again because it's the same. So yes, you can use those tropes because you need that to say to your reader, you are reading a horror, you are about to read a horror story. Yes, here's my haunted house, and it's all dark and it's probably raining and your car's broken down. Yes, you can expect that this is not going to end well. But as a writer, it's great as a starting point, but twist it up. Try and twist it up and come up with a fresh idea. And that's what I'm always trying to do when I start on story. Okay, how can I make this different? And I'm sure a lot of other horror writers do the same thing. It's okay, we're starting with a haunted mansion. How can we do this different? Maybe it's not really a mansion. Maybe there's, an asylum locked in here or something. Who knows? The ideas could be so vast. I think just expand on them.
Yeah,
Use them as a starting point.
I haven't read a lot of horror, but I watch a lot because I don't know why the written word terrifies me more than viewing it, I suppose, on a screen. And I know screenwriting's different, but there was a movie that I absolutely loved it's not recent either, I don't think, called The Ritual. Have you seen that one? And I might have started watching that. What I really like about horror these days is storylines that they put in there. Like, I was a massive fan of the American Horror Stories series because of the stories that they told in each episode. You still had your ghosts or your eerie stuff happening and everything, but it was what was happening, the whole intertwined storyline between all the characters. And I just absolutely loved that. And in The Ritual, it was a group of guys. There was an incident that happened between two of their friends, which they were going on a lad's holiday. They've ended up in the Swedish hills because that guy died in a mugging or something. And one of them was a mess or something. But they played with you in a bit that you thought with the characters, they obviously had conflict between themselves over their friend's death, and you kind of felt like this was the one that was going to end up dead, or the person, the main character who he was left with out of the friends. That was the shock, because you just thought that person was going to be the first one to go, and then he was actually the last one. And it was really, really different. So I do like that. I like how that
listening to you there, you're just touching on what's necessary in any story, and that is connecting the reader with the characters. You've got to bring your characters to life in any story, not just horror, in any story. And if you can, then that's the challenge that as a writer we all face, is connecting the reader to our characters and making them care about that character. You know, we want them, we know they're going to have something horrible happen to them, and we are rooting for them, saying, you know, you can do this, and it's almost, you need them to win this, you know. And that's where the emotion comes in. When you get invested in those characters, then that horror aspect and all these horrible things that happen to them, then you start getting that horror flowing through you, because you are invested in that character, and that's the guts of it. That's what we try to do when we sit down at the typewriter and write a story and saying, I need you to love my character so it hurts you as badly as it hurts them, you know. Because
I grew up with the likes of Scream, remakes of Friday the 13th, Camp Crystal Lake, which was really, there was a storyline, but it's always like you said, the psycho killer drowned or whatever, and then there's always the mad mother that comes back to, you know, revenge on her bloody son. Where's the mad father? And really, it's just about people getting picked off one by one. So I really felt like with the horror that I grew up with, Stephen King aside, because he was different, that was it. There was like always just a mad person killing people off. So I do think that's what's changed, I guess, like nowadays.
Yeah, they're popular in movies, and I think there was one that just came out again, Halloween Ends. Again, I haven't actually watched any of the Halloween movies, or if I did, I can't remember them. It's very difficult for me to watch horror movies now at home. I've got an older boy who I don't want to traumatize just at the moment. And so if I do watch something, it's very late at night by myself and with the subtitles on.
Which is probably when you're supposed to watch it, isn't it? With the light out in the dark.
Yeah, probably.
Maybe not with subtitles.
Yes, I'm probably not up to speed with a lot of, so I did get that Midsummer Nights one in. There was another one that I read about a guy who was living with his family. I can't remember the name of it, but he was living with his family, and it turned out that his family was dead. They were ghosts. Was it more horror and more it was kind of like more psychological horror. I quite like that. Not so much blood. I'm not.
Different types.
Look, to be honest, I'm not really big on the slasher type movies and all those movies like Saw and stuff. I actually think those stories are real and someone's filmed them and then they turn it into a movie. So I can't watch them because I think they're real. I'm myself. I'm not really. I can't stand the violence of some things, and that gory stuff's not really my deal. But again, with them, they did something that no one had done before, I guess, which was really clever. Like with their first one, there was a vampire movie I watched maybe last year, Red Sky or something. I was recommended that, and I thought I don't particularly like vampire stories, but this one actually refreshed my love for vampires because it was. I just thought it was done so well. She was a real vampire, and she was trying to do the right thing, and she had this daughter who was, I think she was going on a plane flying overseas to try and get treatment for her condition, her being a vampire, if that was possible.
Is it? Was that? Oh no, Red Skies. I was going to say that Red Santa Clara Diet.
I can't remember the call of it, but I thought that was really good. It was quite realistic, and you really did feel for the character being a vampire. I thought that was really well done. So
but I guess back to the writing of horror rather than I could go off on a movie tangent because I do love movies, especially horror ones, but it would be different from books. They're good
to analyze. Movies are easier to analyze than stories, so if you're looking to learn about how do you write horror, movies are a good one to draw from because it's all there. It's very visual. You can see how it all plays out, and then okay, they did this or they did that or whatever. Yeah, movies just make it easier somehow. But when you're actually starting to write and you've got to describe that, then it's good to read as much as you can and see how the really good writers pull a scene together.
Do you have books you recommend that you've read and you've thought, wow, yeah, that's the...
I always hate to name names because I hate to forget somebody.
Yeah, okay. Favoritism. Yeah. No, that's
I always have. But I think, and I hope he doesn't mind me mentioning him here, but I think the president of our Australian Horror Writers Association, Alan Baxter, he's being described as the next Stephen King. I've read his work. He's a brilliant writer. He's very dynamic in the industry. Look, I think Stephen King can maybe go and retire because Alan's moving up. I wish him all the best because he's putting out some really good work. So if you were new to the industry and wondering how do I go about writing horror, how do I pull it all together, then he would be one that I would recommend. Yeah, so it's I think Australia should be quite proud that we have our own horror god.
Yeah, fabulous. Oh, I can't wait to check him out. So, I mean, what do you have some more tips for authors who are looking to write in the horror genre? Any sort of do's and don'ts? Or
better not leave Alan all there by himself. And
sorry.
I don't want to leave lady writers out there as well, but we've got Across the Ditch in New Zealand. New Zealand's often pulled in with Australia because we're so close. We're all buddies here. Lee Murray's my top pick on there. She just won the Bram Stoker for a short story just recently. Her poetry books have won both Brams. I think it won Bram Stoker. Don't quote me on that one. But she won the Australian Shadows Awards last year with it, and she's a brilliant poet, partners in that. Yeah, if you were looking for another style of writing, she'd definitely be a top pick. And that I think I should stop there just with those two because honestly I do have other names there, but I will forget other important people.
Yeah. No, that's great.
Yeah, there are so many. If you join these associations, these names will crop up and you'll start finding the ones that you like and that resonate with you. Those two have resonated with me, and there will be others. There are just so many. But we're really lucky. Horror is very strong here in Australia, and we're doing really well on the world map, I think, thanks to these two people. It's very exciting.
That is good. No, we'll have to check them out. That's fabulous. In writing horror, is there got to be some sort of suspense building or
look, if we have a look at my story The Best Medicine, which I always like to refer to because I wrote this to a formula when I was learning, because at the time I wrote it, I was like, okay, how do I write a horror story? So I think using this one's probably a good example. The formula that I used, or the advice that I took, was from a lady called Savannah Gilbo. She's in America, and she writes blogs on all aspects of writing, not just horror, but on everything. And but one of her blogs was about, what needs to be in a horror story. There are a few points that she brought up, which I applied to this story, The Best Medicine, and I double checked and said, okay, do I have this? Do I have to have this? The basic run of any horror story is we start off with the monster. We've got to show the monster. Okay. In my case, in The Best Medicine, I actually opened with my protagonist. Okay. You would think when you read the opening paragraph that my protagonist was the innocent victim here, but actually fact she wasn't. Okay, so I've ticked that box. The second one, I suppose if I could just jump back, I've got two monsters in this story. One is the protagonist, one the wife, and the husband. Now, the story is about a wife who's caring for her brain-injured husband. After she crashed the car and he banged his head, he's now left in her care. The story is about her trying to find a way to survive his angry outbursts from his injury and what she has to do to survive that. So she's got him on all these drugs. She's been down through all the doctor's reports and that. And throughout the story, I put in the little snippets from what the doctor says, how his emotional swings are going to start spiraling out of control. He's going to lose more memory, lose more faculty. Things are just... it's just going to be basically bad for him. So her struggle in the story is how to survive that. How does she live every day trying to care for her husband who is mentally and physically declining? From the husband's point of view, he is in a state of huge depression because he is mentally and physically declining, and he's aware of that. Now, I've set this story in a remote mountain area, so there's no neighbours.
Yep.
No one can hear them, no one can hear you scream, so I chose that. I've put a walking track in there, which is known to have suicide people jump off. So that's another element that I could use to up the tension in there. So, well, is one of them going to jump off the cliff because I've mentioned it, So the story sort of goes down. It starts where she just wants to go shopping and get food. But her way of for her to go shopping is such a drama. She's got to make sure that husband's not going to wander off up the trail and jump off the cliff, okay? Because she loves him very much. They love each other very much, but they're in this horrible situation. So she keeps him fairly drugged. Problem is, if he starts having a meltdown, he gets very violent, and he accuses her of going in to see the butcher, and talking to the butcher, because all he wants to eat now is steak and potatoes, nothing else. And I'll have that every single night. So when she's writing out the shopping list, it's steak and potatoes, and maybe I'll eat something while I'm out because, damn, I've got to eat steak and potatoes again. So it's all pretty doom and gloom for her. As we progress through the story, he's triggered by a news report about a missing hiker. And they have hikers in their area who go and walk that track. So there's a missing hiker. Before his accident, they used to see hikers all the time and maybe rescue some or find some that had fallen off somewhere. So they're well aware of hikers going missing in these woods. But again, that's a bad news story that could trigger his emotional decline, and she doesn't want him to hear that. So she's worried already that he's starting to show the signs that he's having a bit of a mental breakdown right now before she goes shopping, in which he does. He starts up and then he gets quite violent. And this is where she has already put in place things to help her survive. So first she tries to give him drugs to calm him down, which doesn't work because he's drinking beer at the same time and it just actually goes backward for her. Then when he gets really violent, she locks herself behind a door, which he's already broken 3 times, and she's hoping that this time the lock will hold, but it doesn't. So that's another line of defense broken. So she has a third line of defense, and this is where it gets very horrible at the end, where she has the hiker that has gone missing. She has actually caught and drugged him and has him dressed up in her clothes so that when her husband comes in past all those defenses that she put up, and this is the final confrontation, he thinks it's her. He kills the guy thinking it's her, but then he's so angry he passes out and he wakes up remembering nothing, and she has this whole room set up saying, that she says she's renovating, and it's got paint down there. It's actually bleach that she uses to remove the body, and the time that she did spend with the butcher was that learning how to cut up a body to remove it and dispose of it, and all these things that roll into place. So by the end of the story, you find out that, yes, he's a monster, but she's actually a monster too.
Yeah.
And that was a twist at the end. But she's doing that to survive. And she will remove the body, dispose of the body, get her husband all cleaned up, remove all evidence of the crime, and just say, he's passed out from the paint fumes. Tuck him back into bed. She'll go into town. All will be good until the next time.
That is incredible.
Yeah.
Was it? And it's twisty. You wouldn't have expected that.
No, and I think that was a good twist. That's what won me that story.
That's amazing. And all links and everything to your website and these stories and stuff will all be in the show notes for people to find where they can, buy and read. And
absolutely, yeah. So when I wrote that story and when I was double checking against Savannah's guidelines on what needs to go in, we've got can't be reasoned with. Okay, that was one of them. Yep, she can't reason with the husband when he starts on a downward spiral. The monster's stronger than the protagonist. Okay, yes, he is physically stronger than her, even though he's suffered a brain injury. He's still twice her size, and can cause physical harm. So that one was ticked off. The sin, this is a good one. The sin. Okay, the sin was that she was the one who was driving the car and caused his accident, and she feels guilty about that. So that one ticked off. The setting, which is isolated, yes, isolated, no one can hear him. Lives are at stake, hers and his, because she has to stop him from killing himself because of his depression. But her life is also at stake because when he goes into a spiral.
And the hikers.
And the poor hikers.
Stolen.
Yeah, the poor hikers. The slow reveal of the true monster. Well, that's, the slow reveal. By the time you get to the end, you realise that the true monster is the wife. The false ending, yes, again, we've got that. The shapeshifter, they're both shapeshifters. She changes from the depressed wife to the catching the hikers, and he's also a shapeshifter because he goes from the loving husband to the horrible husband. And then the last one is the ticking clock. You've always got to have a ticking clock. And in this case, it was his medicine. He's spiraling down, and the medicine's not working, and she's got 5 seconds to get out of that room or she's dead.
Yeah.
So using those things, and you can look up Savannah's site and learn absolutely stacks from her. She's just brilliant. They were important. They just help, bring these things together. I guess the only other thing then is, you've created the atmosphere, you've ticked all those boxes. Word choice, again, is crucial, and that's where reading widely will really help. Don't call it red lipstick, call it blood red lipstick. Me and an editor discussed once. Things like that.
Yeah, no, that is amazing. No, I think it is good to sort of start with even a checklist or a framework that someone coming into it who doesn't really know but thinks that they know a little bit, and to work as a guideline before, like you said, experimenting and playing with the stories to be a little bit different and twisty.
I think in any story, whether it be horror or any story, there does need to be some kind of structure there for the story purposes. There's got to be a goal. There's got to be progressive complications. There's to be a turning point, decisions made, and, the outcome of that at the end. And somewhere in all that, your main character has to have changed. They've got to have gone through a change. There's no point having a story if there's no change. And so that's just the guts of any story that you should also apply to whatever genre you write.
Yeah, no, that's incredible.
The challenge.
Thank you.
That's the challenge.
Well, thank you so much for sharing all that. That's absolutely great. We're going to obviously, look up the best medicine and the rest of your work, but what can we expect from Pauline Yates in the future? Have you got more stories on the go? You mentioned a novel Way at the start. Have you?
I do, yeah. Okay, so here I'm thinking I've got nothing to do. No, I'm actually really, really busy at the moment. So currently, right now, I've just started judging the Australian Shadows Awards. So I get the stories in. I've got a lot of reading to do. I'm just loving it at the moment. That will take me right through till March. So lots of reading for me to be done. On the writing front, I've got another story coming out, I think maybe towards the end of this month. It would fall in the horror genre. It's probably more spooky, supernatural kind of horror. I really like this story. It's with a publisher I've been with before, Redwood Press, and I've had one story come out with them last year, put out the call for another anthology this year. It's titled Superstition. I just couldn't resist. I thought, I've got to put another story in with her because she was so great to work with. I'm really lucky the publishers I have worked with in the past over the years, they've all been fantastic to work with. I've just learned so much from them. So she's one. Excited that I have the IFWG publishing, which I always thought was just way out of my league. I sold them a story that will come out next year sometime. So very excited about that one. And I've got another, it's not a spec fic, it's probably more a fantasy type story coming out with another publisher, but that's in production at the moment. So I can't say too much more about that one. So they're probably my biggest short stories coming out. In the meantime, I keep writing Drabbles, Black Hair Press. I absolutely love that. That's my monthly addiction. So I really do enjoy that. What else am I in? I'm in a writing contest at the moment with the NYC. This was really funny because I wasn't going to sign up for it. It's only the flash fiction. It's usually my favourite because it's only flash fiction, which is up to 1,000 words, and you get 2 days to write it. And I thought, no, look, I just don't have time to do it. But then I won a free entry into it, So I thought, okay, fine, I'll do it. Well, the first genre I got was horror. The first genre I got was horror. Yes. So that was cool. And so I got through the first round. I think it came second in my group with that one. The second, then because it was in 2 rounds, the second one was I had to write a spy story. And I thought, okay, it was really funny when I wrote this spy story because it had to include an underwater cave and I had sharks in it, and I ended up having the sharks eat everyone.
I love that.
I kind of went down the horror path too far, and I thought, no, this is a spy story. They can't actually die, and that's not in horror. Yes, anything can die. In a spy story, no, actually they don't. Not necessarily, not all the time. So I had to edit that and have it that they didn't die. They did survive the shark attack, and all was happy. So I got, I think, 5th place with that one, but that was enough to put me through into the semi-finals, which was only maybe a couple of weekends ago. That one I had to write a drama, and I chose to write a Western. I love Western stories. I love Clint Eastwood. Clint Eastwood is my idol. Anything that he produces or plays in. Yeah, I love it. So he was my muse that weekend. So I'm keeping fingers crossed that Clint comes through for me and it gets me into the final. That would be just great.
Yeah, well, we'll cross our fingers as well, but I don't think you'll need it. That's insane.
So, no, yes, sometimes, yeah. And then I guess the really big news I've got is my debut novel coming out next year. Which I'm so excited about, because everything I've done has led to this point. Now, again, I don't want to say too much about that at this stage because we're still in the production process of that, but it's a young adult sci-fi. It has a lot of dark elements in it. It's not necessarily horror. I set this at young adult. It leans more towards young adult because of the themes through it, friendship and family, found family and friendships, and it's pretty cool. Look, I absolutely love this story. I'm so pleased that was picked up and it comes out next year. And so in the meantime, amongst all these other things I'm doing, I'm working on the sequel because I have a sequel plus 3 others. So fingers crossed it goes well next year, because if it does, then I anticipate the next 5 years I'll be spending writing the sequels. So
that's amazing. Congratulations. That's so good. We'll have to keep an eye out for that as well. Well, obviously you got a lot of stories out there getting published, and obviously a debut novel with all sort of traditional representation. As this is the Hybrid Author podcast, have you ever considered, maybe putting out your own anthology, or in the future, possibly
I have. Look,
independent publishing?
I have considered it, but I don't feel I'm experienced enough, and I need someone to have my back. So I think for me to self-publish, I don't know if I'd be brave enough to do that, because there's so many aspects in that publishing world that I'm not aware of. I'd really kind of like the security of someone behind me saying, no, we're not going to do that, no, don't do that, or no, you got to do it this way. I think you only get one shot at it, and I wouldn't want to muck it up. I'm pretty good. So I think if I was going to self-publish, I think I'd bring in a lot of people that I know on board to help me do that. I have often thought of collecting all my horror stories, because now I've got a good collection of them, and putting those together in an anthology. I've only been thinking about this recently and thought maybe not next year, maybe the year after, once these other stories come out and then I'm clear of all contracts and stuff. So maybe a couple of years down the track, I might pull all these stories into an anthology, just so they're all together. Yeah. Which would be nice. Because I've got enough now to do a collection. It would be nice to play around arranging them, so to speak, and using some of the drabbles in between the bigger ones. And so that's a thought. I think if I was going to self-publish, I would do that. When it came to my novel, I really would like someone to have my back on that. And I'm hoping that this one will go well, and that will just smooth my path for the next lot that comes through.
That's
it. Who knows? I'll just get the first one out first. It was always get the first one done first and worry about the others later. So
that's it. No, that's incredible. And also, I suppose, once they take off as well, and you might be interested in putting out your anthology or another book, you can also, award-winning author of the other books that you traditionally publish.
It's actually win an award. I have my little plaque up there from the Australian horror writers. It's got Frankenstein on it. He sits above my desk and glares at me, and I often check in with him. How we doing, buddy?
Sounds like you're on your way, Pauline, for sure. But I'm
on my way somewhere. I don't know where it will lead me, but anyway, it's a fun ride
down a dark path
somewhere.
Well, thank you so much for your time and expertise. It's been absolutely amazing. So many great tips and advice, and just wonderful on horror there. Can you tell our listeners where they can discover you and your work, online, offline?
Sure. So you'll find me, I've got a website. It's paulineyates.com. you will find all my work there, all my stories there. I actually kind of use that website more to remind myself where everything is. A bit of a filing cabinet there. So yes, I do have that. I've got links to everything there. A lot of my stories you can read for free. A lot of them are in anthologies, and if you buy the anthology, great, because that keeps the publishers alive too. I've got any interviews I've done with the various publishers are all on there. Yeah, all bits and pieces. There's all bits and pieces on there. I try and keep it up to date. You can follow me on Twitter at MidnightMuser1, and I think that's all. And on Instagram, I've only just started an Instagram account. I'm getting more experienced here. Yeah. So follow me on Instagram at MidnightMuser1 too. So, but all my links are on my website. I've got everything nice and neat in one of those link tree little things, and you'll find me everywhere there. You find me on Goodreads, find me on BookBub, you find me on Amazon, with all my books. So well, not my books, but my publisher's books. I'm just in a lot of them. So,
Oh, that is amazing. Thank you so much, Pauline.
Thank you so much for having me.
So there you have it, folks. The absolutely astounding and inspiring and amazing Pauline Yates, sharing so much in the horror genre. Watch out for Pauline's debut novel coming out at the start of next year, so we're very excited for that. Next time on the Hybrid Author Podcast, we have multi-award-winning psychologist Peter Quarry on making peace with the past and re-energizing for the future. So happy Halloween when it comes, folks. I wish you well in your author adventure this next week. That's it from me. Bye for now. That's the end for now, authors. I hope you're further forward in your author adventure after listening, and I hope you'll listen next time. Remember to head on over to the Hybrid Author website at www.hybridauthor.com.au to get your free author pass. It's bye for now.